Ladies and gentlemen, this is your host, William Robinson, coming at you live today from the studios of Talk, Love, and Communication. I believe that all problems, circumstances, situations can be resolved through the proper channels of love and communication. Today we have a special guest, Dr. Carla Maria. She's an author, motivational speaker. She's a power movement strategist and a woman after God's own heart. She's going to put some wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to us today. And we want to thank her and give her a special round of applause. We want to thank her very much, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, Dr. Carla, how you doing today, young lady?
I am doing marvelous, thank you.
Thank you very much. We want to thank you for joining us today. How does it feel to be here today?
Oh, it's my pleasure. I've been waiting for this day.
Oh, yeah? And why is that?
Because when you were first getting started and we were talking about it, I was like, I'm going to be one of your podcasts.
That's right. You did promise me that. Mm-hmm. Likewise, I would like to be a guest on your podcast.
Oh, definitely.
Would you like to share with my audience? Tell us a little bit about yourself, ma'am.
Okay, so let's see here. Author, best-selling author. I've been in 2 anthologies and then my own book as well, too. I also do corporate training, and I'm a Christian strategy coach. And woman after God's own heart, I love the Lord. And you'll find that most platforms I'm on, I'm going to always include Jesus in that conversation.
That's right. I think Jesus is the key to all forms of love. Yeah. In order to love properly, I think Jesus must be involved, you know?
Oh, yes. Definitely.
You also have a podcast also, correct?
Oh, yes. It's getting ready to start back up again. It is called Extra Blessed with Dr. Carla Maria, where we inspire you to live the blessed life. You are blessed to be a blessing.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful, ma'am. So, ma'am, you know, what motivated you to be an author, ma'am?
Well, what motivated me to be an author was after I went through something in corporate where I was mistreated, and then after getting divorced after 30 years of marriage, I decided what were the things that helped me to thrive over that situation. Mm-hmm. And so there were 8 things that were critical to me coming out and thriving and going through, not getting stuck, but going through that situation. And so I pinned all those 8 moves. I call them power moves. And it's called 8 power moves to protect the queen, ruling your world, and creating the life you desire.
And that's important. So you was trying to encourage other women who have been through your situation and circumstances.
Oh, yes. I want to encourage women who were going through divorce, women who were going through mistreatment in corporate, women who had been hurt in relationships, women who just felt like they didn't measure up. I want to encourage all women, but here's the wonderful thing about this, and I get so tickled when I talk about it, is that not only did I encourage women, but I had men to read my book as well, too. Because one thing about the power moves, they're not gender specific, but they work no matter if you're male or female.
Because, you know, throughout most relationships, you know, you have certain characteristics of people in men and women. You know, you have some women that are very supportive. You have men that are very supportive. You have women that are very toxic. So do you have men, you know, that has problems in relationships. So the problem can come from either gender. And that's a great point that you made, ma'am. Would you care to share one of the main points in your keys?
Okay, let me give you one. I'm giving you one that's a little challenging for most people, but it's so powerful. And that one is the power move that says, practice the art of forgiveness.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think the key element is to that practice, man? What do you think the most important thing to get you over the hump when you're trying to practice that?
Well, first of all, I tell people you just have to take it from moment to moment and step to step, because when you've been mistreated and it's a hurt that's deep, sometimes it takes a moment to get over it. But here's some key things. that I kept in mind when I was going through practicing the art of forgiveness. First of all, forgiveness is not for the other person, it's for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you forgive, you no longer give that person power over you. You now have the power in your own hands. And so forgiveness is for you. And I tell people, forgiveness is something that you give, you extend it to people, just like Jesus extended that to us. God so loved the world that, that he gave his only begotten son, but also he loved us while we were yet in our sins. So he forgave us. But here's the thing about forgiveness as well, too. When it comes to forgiveness, forgiveness is given.
Correct.
Trust is earned. So just because you forgive somebody doesn't mean you have to trust them.
That's right. So what do you think the difference between forgiving and forgetting?
Well, I think the difference between that is when you forgive, you release. When you forget something, you don't have any remembrance of it. Well, here's the thing about forgiveness and forgetting. You can forgive, but you may still have some residue of what happened.
That's correct. And I think that most people, the problem is a lot of people try to forgive, but they can't forget it. And when trigger points come back up, it triggers the situation and bring the emotions back. But, when we talk about Jesus, the Bible tells us when we true forgiveness, as far as the east is from the west. So we can't forgive and continue to bring it up. We must release it and forget about it and act as if it didn't exist, and which is very hard for most people because the hurt and the pain and the trauma that it caused on the individual that was wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think with that, what happens is that you have to allow the love of Christ to come in and wash you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you allow that love of God to wash you and to cleanse you, then forgiveness is healing. Because one thing about forgiveness is that once you realize that, first of all, you've been forgiven by God himself. And so now you're forgiving somebody, you're extending that same gift to them. And then what happens is, as you're going through the healing process, it doesn't sting so bad. Right. It's like when you see a sore, when it first happens and it's fresh and it's open, but as it heals and then you get that little scab, and then after a while, you keep putting cocoa butter on it, and then after a while you just see a slight residue, and sometimes you don't even see it anymore. And that's the power of forgiveness, is that it allows you to release, to forgive, and then it doesn't sting so bad. There's things that have happened to me in my life. I can think about them, but they don't have any power over me.
Right.
The pain is no longer there.
Correct. And when you mentioned love and the love of God. So when you think about love, ma'am, what comes to mind?
When I think about love, to me, love is a dedication and commitment to someone. And love is also an action word. It means you're giving something. Like I said earlier, God so loved the word that he gave. So love is about giving. But here's the thing about it, is to be devoted and committed to. Because sometimes you may not feel like you love someone, because love is more than the feeling. Like, say, for example, take a mom whose child got in trouble. They wound up in jail. She may not feel like loving him, but her devotion and commitment will cause her to stand by him.
Correct. I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that you were married. You were married for 30 years.
Yes, I was.
And in a 30-year marriage, can you express how could that, one of the greatest mysteries to me
mm-hmm.
is how a man could get down on one knee out of every woman he's ever met and ask this woman to marry him. A lot of things, what makes a man marry one woman over the other woman.
Mm-hmm.
A man may have 10 women throughout his life, but he married this woman over that woman. And that's something I'm going to cover at a later date, because that's a great mystery. What makes a man choose one woman over the other? Because there's no marriage without the man, because the man do the acting. He does the bending. He does he's the one that get down on one knee. And with that being said, ma'am, can you take us through the beginning of your marriage and walk us through the 30 years?
Oh, yeah, I can do that very, very quickly. So, first of all, I got married young. I got married at the age of 23.
Mm-hmm.
So, I still lived at home. I was married, and I was divorced at the age of 53. But I think what happens in marriages is that when you stop, going back to my definition, when you stop being devoted and committed to someone, then it begins to cause a separation. See, you don't have to feel like you're in love. I know people go, "Oh, I feel like I'm in love," or "I fell out of love." You don't fall out of love. What you do is you stop being devoted and committed to someone.
Correct.
And when you stop being devoted and committed, then that's when the love starts to dispel. But what happened in my marriage was, and I think a lot of women do this as well too. Sometimes you may see some red flags and you go, "Oh, that'll pass, that'll pass." And I tell women even now, if you see red flags, don't ignore them. Don't ignore them. Address them.
But how do you feel about, okay, being a woman after God's own heart? Okay, once you marry, a lot of people have this elaborate wedding and they invite all these guests, and you're not getting married to the people. The people's just a witness. You're making a vow to God. So, and we talk about the love of Christ, no matter what we do, we goes back to that mom, no matter what that child do, the devotion never runs out. We're going to continue to love that child. We may be a little ashamed. It may make us a little embarrassed, but in the end, that's my child.
Oh, yeah.
And I've known a lot of women. I got an uncle. Sometimes we talk about my grandmother, which is his mom. And he'll say, I know mom, this, that, another, but that's my wife. And sometimes we get that we get the pecking order out of order. And, and it all goes back to if God is the head of that marriage. When we love, sometimes we get married out of lust. Men are visual creatures.
Yes, they are.
You know what I mean? Women are emotional creatures. So it may have been some things within him that you saw that you admired. And sometimes over years we do change. You know?
But in my case, it was just generally we got married because of love. So that I am assured of. And I can say this. Out of the 30 years of marriage, 5 of them were like, but 25 were good. So I'll never say anything bad about him. I'll never say it was his fault, my fault. It was just when two people stop working as one, there's a disconnect.
As we sit here today, what was the turning point? It had to be something you just don't 25 years?
30 years. Well, one thing that happened was, and I talk about this in my book too, is that, and I don't have all the answers. I didn't have them then. I still don't have them now. But I have a resolve that, it is what it is. But one thing I talk about in my book is that there was this point where he says, "Well, I've been unhappy for about 5 years now." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't even know this."
Now, okay, let's talk about that.
Okay.
Okay, so when he mentioned the 5, and he said, I haven't been happy for 5 years now. Are you counting that in the 25 years that was good to you?
Oh no, I'm counting that out of 30 years. I'm saying 25 was good. I'm taking away 5 because he said he hadn't been happy for 5 years.
I understand what he said, but were you happy? During those 5 years that he said he wasn't happy, you was happy during those 5 years.
I was happy, but I could tell that we were not as close as we used to be. I mean, you know.
Did he express why he wasn't happy? I mean,
I asked those questions, but as I talk about in my book, 8 Power Moves to Protect the Queen, Ruling Your World, and Create Life You Desire, I didn't get that answer. But I had to be okay with the resolve, and the resolve was this, that marriage didn't define me, and I can't make a person happy no matter what I do, because I tried, because I held on probably too long because I was trying to hold on and make it work. But it takes two people to make a marriage work. And if only one person is trying to make it work, it's not going to work anyway. So I had to finally come to the resolve that he doesn't want to be in this. You do. But then it got to the point, to be quite honest with you, where I was like, if he don't want to be here, I don't want to be here either.
And, to my audience, she made a very important statement there when she said, I can't force him to love me, so to speak. Even God doesn't force you to love him. And she asked him the question bluntly, well, what is it? Why you're not happy? And we men have to communicate. And a lot of times that's the problem. We don't communicate properly.
Well, I'm not going to just say that it's just men. I'm going to say that sometimes we as individuals don't communicate properly.
But the majority of men, women are emotional. So,
oh, yes, we are.
So being emotional, you're going to ask questions. Well, honey, why?
We're going to ask questions. We're going to cry. We're going to act the fool.
And naturally women are problem solvers. Men are problem solvers, but women, they're going to know if it's something, especially when it comes to their feelings.
Yes.
And sometimes I think it's the protector side of us. Sometimes we if it's something that we know that may hurt you, we may just hold it back and we just, I don't want to, we just shut down. But I have learned that that's not proper communication. Sometimes we turn into, throughout my process of going through anger management over the years and certain things, we call it the invisible man. Where you just disappear. You're there, but you're not there.
My. I like
that. The volcano man, you let everything build up and build up and build up. Yes. And one day it's one big eruption. The silent man. You know what I mean? So these are all things that I've learned over the years. Yes. And I saw it within myself, and I learned that they were not proper communication. That wasn't right. Yeah. So I have a lot of love and respect for the past women that was in my life dealing with me through my foolishness. I can look back and see myself, but moving along, ma'am, and I believe when it comes to marriage, when marriage is ordained by God and we fight no matter what. But like you say, both people got to be willing to fight.
Oh yeah. You do have to be, both parties have to be willing to fight and to be, and I keep going back to my definition, to be devoted and committed to. Because it doesn't matter how you feel. Feelings are irrelevant because feelings are fickle and they can't be trusted. Because one moment you feel like, oh, I'm in love. And next minute, I don't feel nothing. It's like, sometimes you feel like, oh, I'm safe. Sometimes you feel nothing. So feelings are irrelevant because they don't matter. What matters is your willingness to be devoted and committed to someone. And that's what love is all about, being devoted and committed. And the minute that you're not willing to do that, then the relationship doesn't stand a chance.
Okay. Let's talk about Carla Maria.
Okay.
The power movement strategist.
Oh, no. Okay.
And what brought about this part of your life?
Okay. So power move strategist came as a result that, from my book, first of all, 8 Power Moves Protect the Queen. But I call them power moves because even though they're simple moves, when you do them, you operate in such a power and victory that it's amazing. And so I started becoming known as the power move strategist because I'm able to work with clientele through my coaching business and give you strategies and help you come up with plans that allow you to operate in power. And one of the greatest powers I believe there is when you have the power to create the life you desire on your own terms.
And when we, you being a Christian, a woman of God, when the Bible speaks of faith, and you just said being able to create your own life, your own, it's all faith.
Yes.
It's all belief.
Yes.
It's all willpower. You have to will it to you. You have to speak it into existence. You have to believe it. You have to dream. You have to visualize it in order for it to become a reality. You know what I mean?
Well, first of all, faith without works is dead.
Correct.
So people have to put some action behind what they're doing. But it's very important that, like, for example, the words of your mouth are very important. I tell people all the time, you're going to be a product of what you've been saying. And because I'm always confessing I'm powerful, I'm victorious, I'm amazing, I'm whatever I'm that. It's
All
like
that.
I'm all that and in a bag of chips. Okay, so it's like, but I confess that. I confess my victory in Christ.
What kind of chips?
Well, I like the lightly salted potato chips by Lay's. Not that I'm giving them any type of commercial or anything like that.
Right.
And I also like sour cream and onion.
You can't go wrong with sour cream and onion. No, sir. No, ma'am, you can't.
They are so good.
I tell you what, ma'am, you mentioned coach. So you are a Christian strategist coach also.
Yes, I deal with women and men of faith. And the reason why I call it Christian strategy coaching is because it's just like regular life coaching, except for the niche is that with the Christian strategy coaching, we're using prayer, we're using the word, and we're still building a plan and we're still taking action steps. But we have those tools that I believe are so vitally important for you to be successful in life. You know, you have the opportunity to take your faith, to take your prayer life, to take the word and work towards your goals.
At what point in your life did you become a Christian, ma'am?
Oh my gracious, that was in my teen years. But then, like all teenagers, you kind of like, oh, and then you come back when you're a young adult. Some people stay forever, but it was when I was in my teens. But one thing I can say is, even if I wasn't always walking the path I feel I should have walked, I always knew about the incredible love of Christ.
Correct.
And I knew that He loved me unconditionally. And that's the one thing about His love. It's not like man's love. Men, sometimes we put, and I'm talking about men, mankind, we put conditions on love. Well, I love you if A, B, C, and D. That's not how God operates. It's like, I just love you. You may be a wreck undone. You may be a mess, but I love you in spite of it.
Now, you know what? I can't help, as you were saying that, what came to my mind. Would you like for me to share with you what came to my mind?
Yes.
Those 30 years. You know, to me, it's just, like you say, He loves you no matter what. And even though, if you've been here for 5 years unhappy, or you going to be here 20 more years because I ain't going nowhere. You know, the Bible tells us to, how do we know through our good works that we won't save them? You understand what I'm saying? And, you know, it's hard. But if it was easy, everyone would do it.
Oh, yeah, and I agree. And I can say this, is that I recently had a conversation with him, and he said that his testimony to this day is that, you know, divorce is the worst thing. You know, he says no matter who's right or who's wrong or who may think they're right or who may think they're wrong at the time, he said, you know, divorce was the worst.
It's something about marriage, you know, and to a man, I'm quite sure when he talk of you, when he speak of you today, he always say, my wife. And I guarantee he have to catch himself.
I don't know if he does it or not. I just know this. I can be assured of this one thing here. And that assurance is that I don't believe he will ever say anything negative about me, and I won't ever say anything negative about him. Because we had so many good years that there's no reason to be negative. There's no reason to be bitter. None of that needs to take place. I tell people all the time, one of the reasons why I'm this fantastic, amazing woman is because of marriage.
Right. You know, what do you think the key component to marriage? What do you think is the key element to a successful marriage?
Oh, you're going to love this answer right here. The key component to marriage is devotion, commitment, and communication.
Communication.
You got it.
And that communication is so important.
Yes.
What do you think the most important form of communication?
I think you have to communicate based on how people receive communication. It's like, because if you're trying to communicate in a way that I don't receive or understand, it's not going to do me any good.
That's an excellent answer. That's the best answer I have heard yet. And, you know, and that also goes with love language. Sometimes we go into relationships and we truly love the other person, but we have different love languages. And sometimes, you know, because I love, this what makes me feel loved, I assume automatically that is the same thing that make you feel loved.
Oh, yeah. And I remember reading that book, 5 Love Languages of Love, so many, many years ago. But it's like, If my love language is affirmations and you're buying me gift, you're not speaking my language.
Correct.
So we have to speak the person's love language, and we have to communicate in a way that makes them feel appreciated, that makes them feel heard. And one thing I say about a lot of females, because we are so very, very emotional, is that sometimes you got to take some of the emotion out of it so that you can properly communicate what you want to say. Because if you're sitting there going, ah, that doesn't get heard. But if I'm having a conversation with you and I say, I feel this way or I feel that way, tell me how you feel.
And proper communication is not, if you tell me, well, William, when you said that to me, that offended me. I can't tell you that did not offend you. You understand what I'm saying? You're sharing with me how you feel.
Yes.
It's not a right and a wrong. It's how you feel. Now, how I respond to how you feel lets you know how I feel about you.
Well, one key component to communication is not to be so reactive. Mm-hmm. I tell people all the time, respond, don't react. Here's the difference. Something happens, you react. Ah! You reacted. Something happens, you respond, you go, let me think about this for a minute. Okay, so A, B, C, and just happened, and here's how I feel about it.
Do you think there's a difference? What's the difference between listening and hearing?
You can hear somebody all day long, but listening to me is to comprehend
Correct.
What they have said. So if I'm truly listening to you, I'm not, I hear you. Like kids do it all the time. You tell them something, yeah, mom, I hear you. Yeah, dad, I hear you. But they don't hear. I mean, they're not listening. They hear, but they're not listening. Listening means to actually understand and comprehend. So when I'm truly listening to you, I understand, I comprehend, and I'm almost to the point where I'm able to see it from your perspective as well too. Even if I don't agree with it, but I'm able to see it from your perspective as well.
And that is correct communication. That is correct communication. We also have body language. How important you think body language is in communicating?
Oh, body language says a whole lot. You cannot say anything, but your body language can say it all. Like you can sit there and look at somebody like, and you haven't said a word, but just the mere fact that you got the body slump, the eyes rolling, you said a whole lot, even though you said nothing verbally.
It amazes me. I was to someone's house the other day, and they have a little dog, and the dog was doing something that she shouldn't have been doing. And he looked at the dog. The dog cannot communicate. The dog cannot talk the way we talk. But that dog, the body language, his facial expression told it all to the dog, and the dog just automatically went to her cage. She knew that she was wrong.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's important. And sometimes, and I had the thought, nowadays, the kids nowadays are a lot different than what we were. And I'm thinking to myself, if that dog could comprehend, don't tell me that today's children can't comprehend. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and it's so amazing that you said that, because when we were growing up, all your parents had to do was give you what I call the look.
That's right.
Like my mom could be in the choir stand and I could be out there in the congregation. But from that choir stand, when she gave what I call the look, I'm looking at the other kids like, y'all go ahead and misbehave. I got to get in line because I got to go home with her.
I got the look.
Because I got the look.
How important is it to have a father figure in the household?
Oh, I think that's very important. Now, I can say this now. I didn't have that in my life. I had it for a brief moment because my mom got divorced. So I didn't have it in my life. But it's very important. But I think there are ways that if you don't have it in your life, there's other ways you can get that. Through coaching, through mentorship, through uncles, through cousins, and that type of stuff. But I think having a proper father figure in the house that's genuinely being a father figure, because in my words, I'm going to say it like this. Anybody can give you a baby. Sperm hit the egg, bam, we got a baby. Anybody can, be that. Mm-hmm. But to actually be a father, that takes discipline, that takes devotion, that takes commitment to actually be a father, to actually parent, to actually be there for your child, to actually mentor your child, to actually pray for your child, to speak life into your child, to speak blessings to your child, to be there when your child has questions and answers. That's fathering. That's a whole different dynamic. It's a whole bunch of men out here. They got pop, 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 pop. Yeah, I got 6 babies over here, 6 babies over there. But are you actually being a father?
That's correct. That's correct. You know, and I think a lot of the young men that's growing up today, the frustration comes from not having their fathers in their life, you know, and not having someone that they can go to and express that, you know. Believe it or not, as much as we resist structure, we all crave structure. We all desire discipline. We're designed that way to have that in our life, you know. And sometimes, you know, and it's not good to the mothers to talk bad of the father to the child. You know, don't paint a negative picture, you know, and some of the cases, it's not the father. It may have been the mom. You know, sometimes we look at mom and grandmother now, but that wasn't the mom and grandmother back when you were conceived. You know what I mean? And we have to communicate, like you say, have more dedication. You know, be more receptive. I talked to a young man on a podcast, and he spoke of the importance of co-parenting. Mm-hmm. Now, how do you feel about, what do you think are some keys to success when it comes to co-parenting children?
Well, I think some of the keys to that are, first of all, both parties always be positive about each other when you're co-parenting. Mm-hmm. I have a friend who, you know, she's divorced, and so, you know, they have to co-parent. They still have to co-parent. They still have to be there for their children. But one thing they do is they don't talk bad about each other. So the kids will never hear one say anything bad about the other one. So I think that's key, that be positive when you're co-parenting. So never talk negative about the other person. And then also when you're co-parenting, make sure you're on the same page about things, like, you know, like, for example, you know, don't be able to go to one and get a different answer than you get from the other.
That's correct. That is very important.
Because kids like to sometimes do what I call divide and conquer. Well, daddy said no, maybe mama say yeah. And then mom says yes, and then now you got that little division between the two because they weren't on one accord. So be on one accord with each other regarding parenting and the rules to parenting, so that they don't divide and conquer. And then no matter what, love those kids, even though the love that you all have for each other, whether y'all still together or y'all like each other, love each other, hate each other, that's irrelevant. But the love you show those kids should be a true devotion and commitment.
I agree with that, ma'am. And that's so very important, you know, for the kids to understand that the mother and the father is on the same page. Even though mom may not be with father, it's the point of us coming together and say we want to achieve the same goal.
Yes.
We have this goal that we're trying to achieve when it comes to raising our child. So we're going to both aim at this, and we're going to both push in this direction. Yes. It doesn't matter. We have to set pride aside and our differences aside.
Exactly.
And come together for the kid, because if the kid see the bond and the connection, he's going to be more prone to be more receptive. Like you say, they will go from one to the other, you know. That's very important. So, ma'am, in this community, how long have you lived in Ocala, Florida?
Oh, wow. I moved here in the year of 2000.
From where?
From West Palm Beach, Florida.
West Palm Beach, Florida.
Oh, yeah.
So you're a city girl, huh?
Oh, yeah. So I moved here in 2000 because at that time, my spouse at that time said that God called him to Ocala. And I said, where is that? And then I was like, okay. But I never want to be one to stand in the way of what God called someone to do. So if God called him here I came. So I left my family and I came here. And after going through the divorce, I decided I kind of like it. It had become home. But I also prayed and I said, God, where do I move from here? Where do I go? Do I go back home? Do I move to Atlanta? Do I move to California, New York? Because I had friends in all locations. So I was like, hey, I go live with some of my friends, you know, a whole new state. But he chose to keep me here.
And what are some of the things that, you know, of course, it has grown a lot since you've been here.
Yes.
And what are some of the qualities that remind you of home? Do you see any similarities?
Well, I mean, when I go back home to see my family, it's like West Palm Beach is just, it's always evolving and it's grown so big. So I don't see too many similarities here. But what I do see here is that it's quiet, it's peaceful, but it's growing. When I first moved here, it wasn't so much here, and now I see it's growing and it's becoming more like West Palm Beach. But West Palm Beach, that's a whole different place. It's amazing down there.
You know, and I think this city has benefited from having Dr. Carla Maria.
Oh my gracious, thank you.
In our city, our great, wonderful city. And as you have grown, we have grown also. And
Yes.
we hope to continue to grow. You know what I mean? At this stage, we're going to play a little game
Okay.
called Fill in the Blank.
All righty. Fill in the blank. All right. Okay.
So I'm going to ask you a question. You answer good, short, brief. First thing come to mind.
Okay.
And we'll go from there.
All righty.
Okay. I've always wanted to.
Be a speaker.
I love when someone.
Compliments me on my smile.
You have a wonderful smile, man.
Thank you.
My favorite holiday is,
My birthday,
which happens to be
October 16th.
October 16th. It aggravates me when someone,
Lies.
the best quality someone can have is,
Loyalty.
my childhood crush was,
Oh, it was between Prince and Michael Jackson.
oh Lord have mercy. And if you had to pick, which one would it be?
Oh, I'm going to go with Prince.
I'll take Prince over Michael Jackson? Oh my goodness. You might have a little competition with my wife. She's crazy about Prince.
I mean, I saw him in person and the way he was moving and playing that guitar, I was like, yes.
Oh Lord have mercy.
But then Michael Jackson, when he had the big afro, A, B, C, he's easy as well.
One, two,
Yeah,
three,
yeah.
that's
It's
right.
like, okay, he was just hot. Okay.
Yeah, okay. If I could travel anywhere in the world, it would be,
Oh my gracious, where could it be? Paris for me right now. I want to go to Paris.
my favorite movie is,
Oh my gracious. Something like Gone with the Wind of the Christmas Story.
A Christmas Story. Yeah,
Ralphie, you shoot your eye out. I don't know.
okay, when you say, why Christmas Story? What is it about Christmas stories that warms your heart?
Well, it's because it's just, to me, it's during the time when TV was so wholesome, but it's also so funny. No matter how many times I watch it, it's just like me and my sisters would watch it. You know, we watch it. It's like we watch it a lot of times, and no matter how many times, it's just always funny, and we can basically quote some of the parts of it. So it's just
Right.
it's just one of those old fashioned good movies. Yeah.
The best love song of all time is,
Oh my gracious, the best love song of all times. What would that be? Oh man. Oh, that's a difficult one. Oh, let's see. The greatest love song of all times. I don't know.
well, who's your favorite artist?
Oh, I mean, I have so many of them. It's like I'm old school, so I'm gonna be like the Teddy Pendergrass, Luther Vandross, Marvin Gaye.
Everybody forget about Freddie Jackson, huh?
Oh, yeah, I listen to him a lot, but Marvin Gaye, woo, sexual healing.
Okay, so what's the favorite love song of all time?
Oh man, the favorite love song of all times. Oh my gracious. Oh man. I'm gonna have to. Okay, I'm gonna change the rules of the contest right quick. Okay, to the game.
Okay.
Pass.
She gonna pass on that song there. I tell you what, if you could go back to any age, what would it be and why?
If I could go back to any age, what would it be and why? Oh my gracious. You know what? I live a life of no regrets. So I don't regret any of my years.
That's good. That's a great answer.
So
That's a great answer.
I just don't, because I purposely live a life of no regret. I don't regret being married. I don't regret going through divorce. I don't regret the jobs I've been on. I don't have any regrets. The only time I regret is when I feel like I've stayed a place too long that God told me to move from.
Right. Okay, speaking of God, if you could ask God one question, what would it be?
Ooh, asking one question. One question is like, why is your love so amazing? Why is it so amazing? That's what I want to know. Why is it so amazing? Because it doesn't matter what we do or what we've done or what we will do. It's just so unconditional. Like, why and how could your love be so amazing?
That's a great question.
That would be my question.
And what do you think his answer would be?
I think his answer would be, it's so amazing because I formed you, I fashioned you, I breathed into you the breath of life and you became a living soul. I made you in my image and my likeness. You're part of me.
And I believe that that's the answer because he breathed the breath of life within us.
Yeah.
It's a man has become one of us. So we, in essence, is God. God is us. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Jesus said, I and the Father, and you and me. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So the next question would be, ma'am, if you were an animal, which animal would you be?
Huh. I never thought about myself being an animal. Okay. So that was really funny. Okay. Because I'm just like, okay. Well, if I had to pick one, I'm going to go with a lion.
I think I already know the reason why. When I meet someone, the first thing I notice about them is
the first thing I notice when I meet someone is eyes.
Their eyes?
Mm-hmm. Because one thing I do is I like to look people in the eye because, you know, that's the window to the soul is the eyes. And then secondly would be the smile.
I'd rather for someone to be in love with me or to love me.
I'd rather for someone to love me. But to love me the way that God has defined love. Because in love, you can fall out of love.
Yes, you sure can. You sure can.
So I prefer them to love me. But to love me the way that God has defined love, though.
McDonald's or Burger King?
Not particularly crazy about either one, but I can say this. If it's a hamburger, I'm going to go with Burger King. If it's ice cream, I'm going to go with McDonald's for the hot caramel sundae.
Your most fondest childhood memory was?
My most fondest childhood memory probably would be just having family around. Because during childhood, there was always family and there was always community. And I think that's the difference between my society and my age group to those now. Back then, it's like everybody knew everybody. The neighborhood, we looked out for each other. We took care of one another. And everybody was cuz or uncle or auntie. They weren't really in real life, but we didn't know that because that's what we call everybody. Hey, that's my cuz over there. That's my uncle over there. They were just neighbors. And so my greatest childhood memory is just community and family.
What's the main difference that you see today and from when you was growing up as a little girl? What's the main difference in the way the world operates?
Well, the main difference I see is that there no longer is community. There's no longer that closeness that we had back then. Back then, there was more structure to me because, believe it or not, when I was growing up, the principal could actually paddle.
That's right. That's right. And when I was growing up too.
Oh yeah, they could actually paddle. And then I did back then. You had, and this is just my personal opinion, there was a greater respect for our elders than there is now.
Okay. So, when you was a little girl, what was your favorite cartoon?
Oh my gracious. What was my favorite cartoon when I was growing up? I don't, let's see. This is going to sound strange. This is going to sound strange, but I used to like Bugs Bunny, but I liked it because of the Roadrunner.
Right, right.
And the Tasmanian, like,
spinning.
Just spinning and spinning around.
So you like all the destructive stuff, huh?
None of it was destructive. It's just they just move so fast. I was like, how can they move that fast? Like,
Right.
But then it's like it was things like I don't know. I did more playing with dolls than I did watching cartoons.
Okay.
I was a girly girl.
So I know while you playing with dolls, you had this dream wedding all in your mind and this dream.
That's the funny thing. I don't know if I so much had that because when I was growing up, I was like, oh, I want to be married one day. But before that happens, I want to move to Atlanta, be this big business person, and then, have all this money, and then I'll get married. And me and my friends had this covenant in college, like, we're not getting married. We're going to Atlanta first. Well, out of us college mates, the first person to get married was who?
Was you.
Me. Yeah, I broke the covenant.
Okay, ma'am. We're going to move along, and this next segment is called AMA, where you get to ask me anything.
Oh, I love that. Okay, all right. Okay, so thank you for letting me ask you questions. So one of my questions is, how do you define love?
Sacrifice.
Sacrifice.
That's right. If you're not willing to sacrifice and set yourself for the other person, how do I love them? Jesus is the ultimate sacrifice. He went and sacrificed himself and gave himself for us to show us that he loved us. In today's world, everyone seems to be kind of selfish, self-centered. So I love you as long as everything going good. But if I have to wake up in the middle of the night, I don't love you. That's not love to me.
And so what sacrifices have you had to make in the area of love?
Wow. As a husband, a father, a son, a grandparent, I think a man is constantly, it's in the mind frame. The Bible tells us to be renewed and transformed by the renewing of our mind. It's the thought pattern. A lot of decisions, every decision I make is because of the ones that I love. It's a lot of things that I may do that if it was just me, I'm going to go back to, most of my audience know my story. I spent 18 years in prison.
Yes.
Because I made a selfish decision. And my mind frame at the time was, even though I'd done it in my mind, for the love of someone else, the point was, I'm the one going to have to do the time, not you. So what are you worried about it for? But I have since learned that my decision affects so many other people. So I'm very conscious of every decision that I make. And I think that's a sacrifice because I'm setting myself aside for those that I care for.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say to your younger self about making sacrifices?
I would tell my younger self to pay attention. Be willing to compromise. Truly put others first. And most of all, believe in the Lord Jesus Christ.
And when did you accept the Lord as your Savior?
As a child, I remember going to church and everything, but like you say, I'm running under the pew, looking at the pretty girl and everything else, But as a child, it was always something different to me, It always was like just me and the preacher was in there, you know what I mean? And it wasn't until after I got arrested I was able to sit still long enough. I think that I don't think prison. Some people say, "Oh, you got prison religion," and I think it was a point of sitting still because I've always been blessed. And just because you decide not to follow Christ doesn't mean that he hadn't chose you. And when he chose you, I had nothing to do with it. So I was blessed in my wrongdoing, even though I didn't deserve it. That's where his grace and mercy come in at. All the times he allowed me to get away that I thought I'm slick, I'm just the best, I'm fine, I'm straight fire, you know what I mean? It was his grace and mercy that carried me through. And before, I always looked at it as if it's kind of like a person climbing a mountain. As you chip away, you set a rope, so if you fall, you're only going to fall so far. It's something to catch me. And maybe I was able to go, I was at that point about to go over to the point of no return. So he allowed me to sit still long enough so he can reach me. And it only took me one time to read the gospel. And I never was the same. The first time I read it.
I love it. And my final question is, what made you start this podcast?
Throughout my incarceration, I had spinal surgery. And that's another level of being humble, and as I sat, you have to trust in God. And I remember me always edifying other people, preaching to other people, telling them about the Lord over the years, and I remember laying on the operating table when it was emergency surgery. Once they saw it, they rushed me to a surgery. So my family, no one knew. My family didn't know I'm in prison. These people got me, my mom, these people tell me they're finna cut my neck open. So I'm kind of, hey, my mom, me, da-da-da. And as I'm laying there, I remember thinking, well, it's time to practice what you preach. Because I tell people, oh, mom about to die, the dog about to die, the cat about to die. Oh, I need to be there. Oh, I need to be there. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Mom could die with you laying right there by the bed. What is my mom going to do right now? What is my wife going to do? What are my children going to do? They can't save me. I have to trust in God that this surgeon is going to do his job. So I had to not worry about mom, and I had to just believe in God. And I had a long rehabilitation. I went from a wheelchair to a walker to a cane. In my last 3-4 months in prison, as I meditated and fasted and prayed, the word podcast kept coming to me. And I had never heard this word before in my life. I don't think the word existed in 2003 when I left the street. So I went to asking people, what is a podcast? But I couldn't comprehend it. So I come home and I mention it to my wife, my family, my mom, my grandma, tell everybody I know, what is a podcast, man? God told me to do a podcast. So everybody, oh, that's good, So I kind of get sidetracked, visiting family, grandmother, family in the nursing home. Make a long story short, it goes back to before. What did I tell you to do? So I fall, I break my leg. So by me falling, break my leg, I lay in the bed 4, 5, 6 months, leg in the air. Podcast, son. All I could think about was Jonah, him not going to the city of Nineveh. Okay, Lord, if you let me walk again, I take what I had before. I won't complain. And I'm going to do podcasts. And I even reached out to you because I saw that you had a podcast and you helped me, and explained to me the things that you could. And no matter how much you explained, anybody else explained, I couldn't comprehend it. And my wife would say, baby, you learn, go in there and do it yourself. You learn, you can do anything. Go in there and do it yourself. And there was a lot of nights where she come in here 3:30, 4 o'clock. Baby, you coming to bed? But I'm so focused. I'm locked in. I didn't want to go to sleep without learning something. And so the short answer to that is obedience, ma'am. My obedience to what God asked me to do.
I love it. I love it. I love it. and obedience is better than sacrifice. And I want to thank you for having me here today. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, ma'am. I tell you what, ma'am, I want you to look into this camera over my shoulder right here. And I want you to give my guests, give them your information, how they can reach you on your site so they can be an inspiration. They can like and follow you. You got a long line of accomplishments. And I would like for you, ma'am, to let my audience know about each one of these things and how can they get in contact with you? How can they reach out to you for advice? You know, you very influential. And give them any last words. If you had to tell anything to this vast world, this great audience I have, look over my right shoulder and explain to them, ma'am.
All right. So, let me see here. Hey, y'all. So, you can find me at drcarlamaria.com. And my email address is info@drcarlamaria.com. I am on Facebook at Dr. Carla Maria. I'm on Instagram at Dr. Carla Maria. And I'm on LinkedIn at Dr. Carla Maria Jones. And YouTube, Dr. Carla Maria. I need to work on that YouTube channel, so subscribe, okay? My final words to you would be, love with sincerity, and make sure that your love is a commitment and a dedication, and embrace the love of Christ because it's amazing and it's unconditional. So that's all I have to say. And oh yeah, thank you for having me here today.
Thank my guests very much for joining us. And once again, I'm your host, William Robinson, coming at you live from TLC Studio, Talk, Love, and Communication. I still believe, and I will always believe, that all problems, circumstances, and situations can be resolved through the proper channels of love and communication. We only got one life to live, ladies and gentlemen. It's a whole lot easier with Talk, Love, and Communication. I can be reached at TLC Robinson on Facebook and Instagram. Talk, Love, Communication, TikTok, YouTube. Cash App, anybody love you with the letter U. I thank you today. Love y'all very much.